What if the Wild West you love was only 30 rough years, then it died overnight? In 1890, the U.S. Census said the frontier was closed, but movie posters kept it alive for 100 more years. Today, I will show you bizarre Wild West truths the movies never showed you, and why the story got buried. Let us uncover it. The Wild West was only 30 filthy years of chaos, not some epic era. You grow up thinking the Wild West lasts for centuries. Then you check the dates and you feel a little scammed. Most historians use a pretty tight window for the classic Cowboy West you see in movies, roughly 1865 to 1895, from the end of the Civil War to the closing of the open frontier. That is about 30 years of cattle drives, boomtowns, and shootouts, not some endless age. Before that, the region looks more like scattered forts, fur traders, and native nations holding most of the power. After 1895, railroads, barbed wire, and big ranches shut things down. The U.S. Census Bureau literally declares the frontier closed in 1890 because there is no longer a clear line between settled and unsettled land. In that short window, you get cattle trails, big drives, gold rush towns, and the legends that Hollywood drains for a full century later. So the strange surprise, most of what people picture as the West fits into the same amount of time as one modern career. And once you see how fast it rises and collapses, you start asking a sharper question. What kind of life did those 30 years actually buy the people in the saddle? Next, you find out what those dusty cowboys really took home. Cowboys stank, slept rough, and earned trash pay, not hero money. You see slow-motion shots of cowboys riding into the sunset. You rarely see the stink, the blisters, or the pay stub. A working cowhand in the late 1800s usually earns about $25 to $30 a month, sometimes up to $40 if he is very good. That works out to roughly $1 a day, plus food and a bunk in a crowded, noisy room when he is near the home ranch. On trail drives, he sleeps on the ground, eats beans and tough beef, and rides in dust for 12 to 16 hours at a stretch. The trail boss might pull $100 a month, but he takes the blame for every wrecked herd and drowned steer. Most cowboys are young, around their early 20s, and they sign on because they have few other options. Freedmen from the South, poor white farm kids, Mexican vaqueros who already know the work. Clothes rarely get washed during a long drive. Boots stay wet for days after river crossings. Lice, saddle sores, and cracked hands are just part of the deal. There is no hero bonus at the end. After months on the trail, many burn their pay in a single loud weekend on booze, gambling, and sex. Once you see the paycheck, you start looking differently at those famous honor duels in the next part of the myth. Gunfights were messy ambushes in alleys, not cool slow-motion duels. Movies love two men facing each other at noon, dust swirling, hands hovering over holsters. Real violence is a lot more ugly. Surviving court records and newspaper reports show that many shootings in frontier towns happen at night, inside saloons, or in cramped alleys after heavy drinking. Arguments start over gambling, insults, or debts, and shots go off at close range, sometimes from behind. Witnesses often disagree on who even fired first. A lot of bullets miss and hit bystanders. Even legendary figures like Billy the Kid spend more time in running gun battles, jailbreaks, and sudden ambushes than in formal standoffs. Guns misfire, people panic, and some gunfighters are really just drunk men with revolvers who get lucky once. Frontier coroners' reports list many victims shot in the back or from cover, far from any romantic showdown. Even the famous OK Corral fight in Tombstone lasts barely 30 seconds and happens in a cramped lot, not a wide-open street. The Earps and the Cowboys blast away at close range, and several men fall almost immediately. Once you drop the slow-motion duel fantasy, you notice something else. A lot of towns work hard to prevent these shootouts from happening in the first place. Most frontier towns forced you to hand over your guns at the edge. Imagine riding into town after weeks on the trail, and the first thing you see is a sign telling you to unload. That scene actually matches the records. Towns like Dodge City, Deadwood, and Tombstone pass ordinances that require visitors to check their guns with the sheriff, at a hotel, or at a livery stable as soon as they enter the business district. Locals treat this as basic crowd control, the same way modern clubs use security at the door. Merchants want cattle money, not stray bullets through their windows. A cowboy who strolls around armed can get fined, arrested, or thrown out of town on the next train. Newspaper accounts show city councils arguing for tighter rules after big cattle weekends bring brawls and shootings. So the supposed land of perfect gun freedom already runs on local restrictions, posted rules, and lawmen who enforce them with real enthusiasm. Frontier citizens push these rules because they live with the fallout. And once you picture dozens of drunk trail hands forced to park their guns, you start to see why saloons turn into pressure cookers for every other kind of trouble. Saloons doubled as brothels, fight clubs, and debt traps for drunks. Movie saloons look like noisy playgrounds. Real ones run closer to casinos with beds upstairs and a body count. In many boomtowns, saloons pack in gambling tables, alcohol, and sex work under one roof. Brothel girls often outnumber other women in town by ratios as crazy as 25-to-1, pulled in by posters that promise easy money and fine dresses. Some earn around $10 a week, a high wage for women at the time, but it comes with brutal hours, debt to madams, and violent customers. Gambling tables run non-stop. Many cowboys walk in with months of pay and walk out broke the same night. Owners extend credit, then use that debt to keep workers tied to the town. Alcohol flows freely, and fights break out over cheating, insults, and jealousy. On top of the violence, venereal disease hangs over everything. Medical reports from the era treat STDs as a major public health problem. Some cities even create inspection systems for sex workers because infection rates run so high. Once you look upstairs at the brothels and backroom debts, the colorful barroom turns into something darker, and when you zoom out, the faces inside that room look far more mixed than Hollywood ever shows. A huge chunk of cowboys were black, Mexican, or native, and erased. Close your eyes and picture a cowboy. If your brain serves up one white guy in a clean hat, Hollywood did its job. Reality looks wildly more mixed. Historians estimate that roughly 1 in 4 working cowboys after the Civil War are black. Many of them formerly enslaved men who head west for better pay and a bit more freedom. Add in Mexican vaqueros, whose riding and roping traditions shape almost every cowboy skill. Plus native cowhands working on and off reservations, and some estimates push the figure for non-white cowboys toward 40 to 45%. The West also fills up with Chinese railroad workers, black homesteaders in all-black towns, and mixed-race communities along cattle and mining routes. Yet early Western movies pick almost none of them to play heroes. Later storytellers polish the cowboy into a white, rugged individualist and quietly drop everyone else from the frame. Once you put those erased faces back in the street, the next myth about mastermind outlaws looks different too, because many of those legends come from the same selective storytelling. Famous outlaws were broke addicts doing dumb robberies, not masterminds. On screen, outlaws glide through life like genius criminals with perfect plans. On paper, they read more like desperate young men making bad choices. Take Jesse James and Billy the Kid. Both turn into folk heroes in dime novels and ballads, painted as rebels standing up to big banks or corrupt sheriffs. In the actual records, they rob small banks, trains, and stores for pretty modest sums, often botch the job and leave behind dead bystanders and friends. Many gang members drink heavily, burn through money, and die young in ambushes or traps set by lawmen. Most gangs barely last a few years before shootouts, arrests, or infighting tear them apart. Pinkerton detective files and court documents show how often luck, betrayal, and informants decide who survives. Newspapers boost the drama because readers love rebels. Later film studios double down on that romantic angle. So the big pattern: many legendary outlaws live broke, short lives built on petty theft and chaos. And while gunfights and robberies grab attention, quieter killers move through every camp, cabin, and alley, invisible until your lungs or teeth fail. Plagues, STDs, and rotten teeth killed faster than bullets out there. You hear about shootouts and ambushes. You hear less about the cough that never stops and the tooth that turns your jaw septic. In the 19th century, diseases like tuberculosis, smallpox, diphtheria, and cholera ripped through crowded towns and camps. Medical historians estimate that tuberculosis alone kills around 1 in 7 people worldwide by the early 1800s. In places like San Francisco, smallpox epidemics in the 1870s kill about a third of the diagnosed patients during one outbreak, while diphtheria wipes out almost twice as many children in the same period. Life expectancy in the United States hovers under 40 years for much of the century. By 1900, it climbs to about 47, which tells you how harsh the earlier decades feel. STDs also spread aggressively in frontier towns packed with brothels, and treatments remain painful, unreliable, and often toxic. Dental care barely exists outside major cities. Rotting teeth can lead to infections that move into the jaw, blood, and brain. Many people carry old injuries, infected cuts, or untreated fractures for life. Once you remember how fragile bodies feel in this world, the power of the people who manage to run ranches, saloons, and entire towns starts to look even more impressive. Women ran scams, saloons, and ranches while men played lone wolf heroes. Westerns loved the idea of the lone male drifter who saves the town while women stand in doorways and worry. Real records keep showing women running the show. Ranch histories talk about wives and daughters who manage herds, hire hands, and handle finances when men leave for drives or die early. Business documents reveal women saloon keepers, hotel owners, and brothel madams treating frontier vice as hard business rather than wild adventure. Some, like sharpshooter Annie Oakley, build national fame and earn more on stage than many male marksmen. You also find women running scams and survival schemes, fake fortune tellers, card sharps, and capitalists with rooms who use prostitution money to buy property and invest in other businesses. Divorce rates in some territories run high, partly because frontier laws make it easier for women to leave bad marriages than in older eastern states. Letters and diaries show women doing deals, settling disputes, and sometimes picking up rifles when towns turn violent. Myth shrinks them to side characters. Paperwork puts them back in charge. And when you zoom out from those individual stories, you collide with the biggest truth the movies dodge. The entire playground sits on land taken through force and broken promises. The West was built on stolen native land and broken treaties, not honor. Every dusty main street you see on screen rests on land someone else called home for generations. The record on that point stays blunt. Across the 19th century, the U.S. government signs hundreds of treaties with native nations, then replaces them, violates them, or ignores court rulings when land or gold become more valuable than written promises. In 1814, for example, a treaty forces native groups to surrender over 20 million acres in the southeast. Later, the Treaty of New Echota trades 7 million acres of Cherokee Nation land for money and a forced move west. By the early 2000s, native Indian country shrinks to about 56 million acres of mostly reservation land, a fraction of the original territory. The classic cowboy trail often runs straight across land that shifted from native stewardship to federal control to private ranches in a few decades, usually under pressure, fraud, or outright violence. So the final twist is simple and heavy. The Wild West that movies frame as a playground for brave individuals also works as a massive relocation project that benefits one culture while crushing another. And once you learn that, you never look at a lonely rider in a wide-open valley the same way again. Keep that dust in your throat, because every shiny Western scene has a darker receipt. Tap the end screen and ride with me again. The next secret is already waiting tonight.